Hey guys, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kay, also known as ADHD Baddie, and I'm the founder of ADHD Baddies, and we're so excited to have you today. We have an amazing event lined up for you guys with some amazing speakers and some awesome topics, all about us talking about neurodiversity and how it affects women, especially because we are pretty much invisible in this space. So if you guys could, let me know you're here. If I would love to hear where you guys are tuning in from, what city you guys are in, if you're in a different country. We're obviously based in the UK, but we know we have potentially some international people because we've been promoting it all over. So yeah, leave in the chat where you guys are based. If you're based in London, up north, wherever, I want to hear from you so we can shout you out. But anyway, as I guys wait to see if you guys can hear and see me okay, let me know as well in the chat, because this is actually our first ever online event. So it is, it's nerve-wracking, guys. I'm shy. Like, let me know, interact with me. I want to hear from you guys just to make sure that you guys can see and hear us okay, and that, what's it called? Everything's working. So if I can even just get like a thumbs up or anything, let me know. I want to shout some people out. But anyway, as we wait for people to, slowly trickle in, we are neurodivergent, and sometimes we forget about some stuff. So hopefully we'll get more people to log in soon. I'm just going to go on a bit about this event, what to expect, what the flow is going to be like, and a bit more about speakers, and a bit more about ADHD Baddies, what we do, why we're here, and why we put this on. So yeah, let's get into it. Stated. Welcome guys, I'm ADHD Baddie, and I founded ADHD Baddies for neurodivergent women, primarily women with ADHD and underrepresented groups that aren't always represented in the neurodivergent space. And I saw that gap, and I was just like, hey, we need more visibility, we need more organizations and people to understand understand neurodivergence in women, because it's such a niche space where we don't get enough credit, or we don't get enough research done on us, and it affects us so much in so many different ways. So yeah, let me tell you a bit about myself. Hi, I'm Kemi, also aka K. I'm 30 years old from London. I was diagnosed with ADHD at 28, and I also have dyslexia, which I was diagnosed with at 16, and then again at uni at 18. And then, as I said before, created ADHD Baddies because I was tired of feeling alone and misunderstood, and also not being taken seriously enough doing healthcare, in private healthcare, public healthcare. There was no support for ADHD, let alone ADHD women, and how it affects us. So even though I spent so much money over the years trying to figure out what it was wrong with me, spending money on coaches, on courses, thinking I was just lazy, and I was just like, I don't want anyone to have to go through all the hoops that I went through to get the information that I got. And I wanted to create a platform and a space where I could just share all that I've learned on my journey of discovering that I had ADHD with other women, so that they don't have to go through the same thing. So that's why I decided to build this community and my page. So what we've built so far, we began our journey in February 2025, where I posted my first ever TikTok video. Since then, we've grown up to 6,000 followers, and we have 300 people plus people on emails, and we just keep growing, and we're super excited to have you guys here if this is your first time interacting with us. But if you're a member, hey gang. So yeah. We also started doing in-person events last year, December, which was great. And yeah, we'll continue to do monthly meetups online and in person. Obviously, I'm based in London, so all our events for now are based in London, but our plan and our goal is to grow across the UK and hopefully one day across the world. So a bit about our mission is that, as I said before, we're trying to bring representation to underrepresented groups when it comes to ADHD and how it shows up and affects us differently. Women in the neurodivergent space are underrepresented, and it affects us so much differently. As the intro video said, you know, women that are neurodiverse or have ADHD, we end up getting autoimmune diseases and hormonal conditions like PCOS and endometriosis. And there's such a big correlation. There's almost every woman I know that is neurodivergent has one of these ailments, and there's just been not enough research or not enough. We're not really taken seriously enough, even though we are constantly, you know, having these issues. And it's like no one's seeing the correlation. And compared to men, which the other stats are going to show, that's coming up in the slides as well, that, you know, it just affects us so much differently, and there's not a space to really, like, you know, help or educate neurodivergent women and how it affects our bodies and our minds and how to help ourselves. That's the main thing. How can we stop being a victim and, you know, of the effects of our symptoms, and how can we take control and take our power back without depending on, you know, diagnosis that can take a long time, especially when you're in the UK, and on, you know, yeah, and just feeling helpless and hopeless and like we don't have any support, which is how I felt. Also, another mission is to break stereotypes on what neurodivergence looks like. As the name suggests, ADHD baddies, I feel like it's an oxymoron. Like, what do you mean ADHD bad? Like, I'm trying to like evoke the idea that you can be a baddie and have ADHD, you can be a girl and have ADHD, you can be black and have ADHD, you can be Asian and have ADHD. There's no limits to neurodivergence or like any kind of neurodivergence, whether it's autism or ADHD. Like, it doesn't have a look, because the very stereotypical understanding of neurodivergence is that it only applies to little white boys, and that is not true, because there's so many women and so many even inattentive boys that get missed because of this stereotype and this lack of information on what ADHD looks like in different people. So yeah, I'm big on representation, because, you know, seeing girls like me or put out there to represent and be the face of neurodiversity will help so many people help understand themselves and not feel like outcasts or like widows, and they know that they can relate to someone that looks like them or that is the same gender as them, or, you know, has the same background, or at least know that, you know, they're just not alone in general, and hopefully they can see some representation in us and in the diverse group of people that we attract in our community. We also aim to support through education, shared experiences, and community. So I'm big on educating people. As I said, I paid thousands of pounds trying to figure out what was wrong with me when all it was ADHD. And if I just knew a bit more about ADHD and a bit what supplements to take, and, you know, how to treat my certain other things that, you know, come with, you know, being ADHD, whether it's being hypermobile, where it's figma. I'm not going to say this word because I know I'm going to get it wrong. It's called figma. Oh yeah, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm also dyslexic, guys, so if I stumble over my words, please forgive me. So yeah, so there's so many conditions that end up coming with ADHD and neurodivergence, and, you know, we're not unaware of how this affects us, whether it's CPTSD, whether it's, you know, hypermobility, or whether it's PCOS, endometriosis. Like, understanding, you know, why this happens, how we can help ourselves, and how we can, you know, stop, you know, the not so nice traits of our neurodivergences, whether it's, you know, always being forgetful, whether it's, you know, executive dysfunction, whether it's depression, anxiety, how we can take control back and understand ourselves. So I'm big on educating people. Hence why, you know, create this event, create this platform, especially women, because our bodies are so different. And, you know, obviously sharing the experiences of people. So, you know, we can share and understand real life scenarios that are actually happening to people, and also create a community so we don't feel alone. Just the biggest part, because I'd probably like you, probably like me, you probably felt like an alien your whole life, and you didn't understand why you were the way you were. So this is a community, so people to come together so that we don't feel alone and we don't have to mask anymore. Which is already the fourth point. And yeah, obviously I started this as a Black neurodivergent woman. I started this because I wanted to see representation, and I wanted to share my opinion, and I wanted to help people, because this is what I found what helped me. So I wanted to share with whatever potentially could help other people. But this group is open to everyone. So we have men in our community who are also volunteers. We have people that have ADHD, autistic, so many different people, group of people are welcome here. Obviously, our main focus is to focus on women with ADHD, but if you are any other neurodivergent and it helps you and you feel supported here, you are welcome. But our main focus is understanding, you know, obviously for ADHD women primarily and other underrepresented, you know, POC people when it comes to neurodivergence. But everyone, if you're a guy, if you're a girl, if you're they, you're them, you're welcome. Just be prepared to, you know, take everything that we're saying and, you know, how you come across. So our goal, as I said, just a bit repeat, our goal is to reach people all over the UK and hopefully one day the world, to support people, educate people, and to provide resources and to build a community of neurodivergent people that don't feel like they have to mask and feel like they have a safe space and they can be themselves and not mask. So as the intro video said, if you missed it, our intro video was basically talking about the different stats that, you know, have actually been researched about neurodiverse women and ADHD women. Another stat that it was done last year said that, you know, women with ADHD are 3 times more likely to die earlier than their neurotypical counterpart, and for men that is for ADHD men it's only 1.6, so it's almost double, you know, the amount men die compared to women. And like the fact that no one takes it seriously enough, that, you know, we are dying we're literally dying, but no one phrases it like that. They just see us, you know, think we're being lazy and you know, we're overreacting when the stats don't lie. You know what I mean? There's so many stats to corroborate this, as well as, you know, it's not helping there being like over 2 million people on the waiting list currently in the UK for ADHD diagnosis. And in the meantime, while people wait, there is no support, there's no education, there's no in between, there's nothing that, you know, can help guide people to either, like, you know, help themselves or what they can do to help whilst they're on the waiting list before they get diagnosis, or even communities where they can get support and get community to help understand themselves. And I just think that's a big shame and a big gap in the market, and hence why I created ADHD Baddies, because I was one of those people in limbo wanting to understand and, you know, get help myself, but there was nothing, and I was pretty much left for dead by my private and public healthcare services. And on average, the average ADHD woman loses about 8.6 years of her life. So, and that's a lot, that's almost 10 years. And for men, it's 6.8. So again, major disparities in terms of ADHD women and men. And the thing is, these numbers are only for the people that are actually diagnosed. Imagine how many people that have gone undiagnosed, how many women have gone undiagnosed that could make these numbers and statistics increase. So this is not, you know, and these are like recent studies. These studies were done in like 2025. So it's not like ages ago. This is literally last year, and we're only in March. So it's really recent. So yeah, like I'm so passionate about, you know, making sure, you know, women, especially that are neurodiverse, are seen and heard, and that we're taking more seriously than we are currently in the current, you know, climate that we are in the state of how people treat neurodivergence, especially when it comes to women. So our mission today, to be seen, making sure that we are visible, to be heard, to, you know, understand and hear each other's health disparities, and, you know, understanding the intersectionality. I need to slow down. I'm hyperverbal, if you couldn't tell, so I'm speaking on 2x speed. So yeah, to be heard, to take action, to work on strategies that help us in the workplace and in life, and, you know, to support ourselves, because we are, you know, I mean, I know, I can only speak for myself, but I know I'm a very proactive person when it comes to helping myself, because I hate feeling, you know, sick, and it's not a good feeling to feel like depressed and anxious all the time, or to feel sick and not know what's wrong with you. So we need to take, like, we're all about taking our power back and, you know, learning about ourselves so that we can take control of our lives, because we have so much to give and so much to offer. So, you know, this is why we're here to do that. And also make change and, you know, actually fight back and, you know, what's it called? Sorry guys, I'm getting confused because I just saw the chat, all the chats come up. It's not coming up in where I'm on, and I'm just seeing all the chat. So thanks guys for talking in the chat. Love you guys. But yeah, last point, I'm gonna read the chat through. I just don't want to get distracted because, you know, my ADHD, I'll start pausing and trying to read. But yeah, make change, and how make change in the industry, in society, in the government, and fight back and advocate for ourselves. So what's coming up? Just to give you an overview of today's session. The first session, we're going to watch a video from one of our speakers who is currently in Australia, so she couldn't log in with us in real time, but she did give us a presentation all about neurodivergence. So she's gonna, introduce herself and explain a bit more about that. And then we're gonna talk about our speakers' personal journeys and understanding and how much they've learned within the industry and, all the wisdom that they have to share. Then we have session, then we're gonna have a break. Well, we'll have a 10-minute break where you guys can go ahead, get a snack, go get stretched, drink some water, just, rest your eyes a bit. And then after 10 minutes, we're going to come back and do a little mini quiz and trivia so that we can, use all the random unknown facts that we have that we never get to use. Because I know all neurodivergent people I know love a bit of trivia. So I put that in for the break. Second session is going to be all about active strategies that we can use to be successful, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's life, so actual action steps we can take and what we as professionals are doing in the industry to help advocate for us. And also our Q&A is going to be after everything, so you guys have the opportunity to ask questions for yourself for the speakers. So make sure that you save your questions for the end, and we'll have that. Hopefully we can get them seen on screen, but I don't think I've been able to make that happen, unfortunately. But it's okay. Tech difficulties. I'll just read them off. Okay, so let's wait. Sorry, I need to. Our speakers are here, but there's an error that happened. So I'm going to go back to the presentation because I'm going to get back to the slides. You got a cheeky sneak peek of what's coming of our speakers, guys. So hope you enjoy that. But anyway, okay, so housekeeping, guys. We are recording this session. So if you want to come back and see this event, you'll be able to have access to this. If you're part of the community, we'll email to you, or if you signed up on YouTube, if you signed up on Eventbrite, it'll be sent to you via Eventbrite. And if you are a subscriber, so make sure you click subscribe, guys. You can also come back to my page and see the video live, the recording live on the platform. Also, please feel free to chat away. This is a safe space. We have moderators in the chat that also to help make this a safe community. So any weird comments or discriminatory behavior or rude or negative, behavior will not be tolerated, and you will be removed immediately. So yeah, you're warned, guys. Don't be weird. Don't be weird. Like, this is supposed to be cool, supposed to be fun. We're supposed to be, learning and, being happy. So yeah. So now let me do a quick intro to our speakers. So first we have Hayley Burton McKenna. Hopefully I said that right. And she is an associate psychological practitioner who's changing the workplace for neurodivergent people. Hayley is covering the workplace strategies that we've all been waiting for, and talking about real accommodations, self-advocacy without the shame, and how to create spaces where ND brains can feel safe and thrive, and how that looks within a workplace. So she works for PMAC, which is an organization that goes into companies to help them with their DEI initiatives. And she has a background with helping helping people with ADHD and neurodiverse people in the criminal justice system. So she has years of experience. She's awesome, and she also does a lot of work and talks on ADHD and anxiety. So we're super excited to have her on board with us. So next we have Andrea Bilwo, who is the founder of Baddies, the charity, in one of the longest running charities for ADHD, or one of the first charities for ADHD in the UK. She's been doing this for over 30 years. She's also hosted one of the first ever ADHD seminars in the UK 30 years ago. And she's done so much advocacy for ADHD people in terms of policy, fighting for our rights, and supporting families and people with their ADHD through her charity. And she also has an OBE for it. She is a superstar, and we're so happy to have her here. So she's going to help us understand how, ADHD and the understanding of women with ADHD and other intersectional groups have evolved, and how, it's no longer just a privileged few that, get access to or get the diagnosis and get the support. She's going to talk about what we still need to be fighting for, and her experience over 30 years of being in this industry and working and supporting ADHD people. We have Dr. Beth Fadilski. She is based all the way in Australia, and she's the speaker that we're gonna have the video from, where she's gonna be explaining about neurodiversity, as she has a PhD in neurodiversity. She is an autistic researcher who is actually a mutual of mine on TikTok, which I reached out to, who helped me, and was one of the inspirations for the event. And she wanted to be live, but you know, it's like 3 a.m. right now in Australia, so she couldn't. So she said that she would send us a video. So that's what she's doing. She's also been featured in Forbes and Harvard Business Review, and she's done like a whole PhD and dedicated a lot of her life into neurodiversity and understanding the intersectionality with women, race, gender, and what else? What was the other one? Sexual orientation. Sorry, guys, I forgot. And yeah, so she's going to be talking about evidence-based neurodiversity inclusion, translating research into real change, and she's going to bring the autistic perspective when it comes to the ND women's, neurodivergent women experiences. So, yeah. We have also, all the way from the USA, we have Naomi Myrick, who is a psychiatric nurse practitioner with over 15 years of experience and is the CEO of Cardinal Care as Psychiatric Services. She's breaking down barriers for ADHD women, especially underserved communities. And she's also a board member of ASPRAD, which is, I think, the ADHD board in the States. So, and she's, a passionate educator, and also she also is going to introduce a bit more about herself and what she does. And because I know she also trains other psychiatric practitioners on how to diagnose ADHD properly. So I'm so excited to have her on our panel as well. So big shout out to Naomi. And then last but definitely not least is Sanai Etren. She is a lawyer who has retrained to become an ADHD coach. She has was diagnosed with late ADHD and autism, and she also is a TEDx speaker. She also has her own podcast called Neurodivergently Married, and where she talks about motherhood and marriage life as a neurodivergent woman, and how that affects how it affects us so much differently being a mother, and pregnancy and our hormones and everything. And she's also a Green Party Green Party candidate member for Crystal Palace and I can't say that word properly, but yeah, for Crystal Palace. So we're super excited to have her on board with us, and get loads of wisdom from her, and also see policy changes and potentially how we can actually make a political change within the space for neurodiversity. So I'm super excited to have her on board. So if you guys could leave an emoji in the chat for our speakers, so like a clap emoji, as we welcome them on stage. Let's go. Let me see if I can get a round of applause as well for our speakers as we get them on stage. Yes. Woo! So thanks, guys. Thank you so much for joining us and, being here. I can't thank you guys enough. Let's go through, I'm going to let you guys, obviously say your names, give a little, like a tiny intro about your title, and then also, what neurodivergent condition you have, so everyone in the audience can know. So Hayley, you can go first.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, thank you so much, Kay, for organising this for everyone and for having us. It's a real privilege to be here. So yes, my name's Hayley, and as Kay mentioned, I trained as an associate psychological practitioner in the NHS, and now I work for PMAC, and I oversee all the training that we do for organisations, and I have diagnoses of ADHD and dyspraxia.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Hayley. Sanai, can we get you up next?
Yeah, and just as Hayley said, thank you for this event, and also great intro. I learned a lot from that as well. So yeah, I'm Sanai. I'm autistic and have ADHD. I'm a lawyer by background, now a workplace strategy coach for neurodivergent professionals. I'm a new mum, which has led me to advocate and raise awareness for pregnancy, childbirth, motherhood for neurodivergent women. And as if all of that wasn't enough, I'm standing for the local elections this May in the UK for the Green Party for a place called Crystal Palace and Annalee, which is how it's pronounced. I know the spelling could be a bit confusing, and that's in South London.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sanai. Naomi.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner in the US. I own a private practice. It's called Cardinal Care Psychiatric Services. I primarily focus in adults with ADHD, but do some work with children as well. I do also own and run Cardinal Academy, which is an online academy for psych nurse practitioners, primarily to help train in ADHD assessment. And beyond that, I am on the board for APSARD, which is the American Professional Society for ADHD and Related Disorders. And I co-chair the Women and Girls with ADHD Special Interest Group for APSARD, and got the honor and pleasure of being part of the expert review committee that is reviewing the upcoming U.S. adult guidelines that will hopefully be being released later this fall. So a lot of exciting things going on, and I'm very, very happy to be here. So thanks for inviting me, Kay.
Whoop, whoop. Thank you, Naomi. And last but definitely not least, Andrea. Oh, Andrea, you're muted. Of course.
Of course.
Naturally, on brand.
I was not paying attention. Just thanks, Kemi, because you did a great intro of the work that I've been doing over the past 30 years. I'm tired now. I really want to give it up, but it's really hard to give it up. I'm old and grey and wrinkly. But I was diagnosed over 30 years ago, funny enough. So one of the early women to be diagnosed. But apart from all my advocacy and the work that I do, within the charity, all that kind of stuff, I'm a parenting practitioner. I train parents, I train practitioners how to work with parents to give the skills to, give them skills to parent children with ADHD, very much ADHD specific. One of the things that we didn't mention, I talk about, is that I'm also involved in a lot of research projects run either in Europe or at King's College, Southampton University, where I chair what's called patient and public involvement and engagement, which is about bringing the patient's voice. Because I think that over the years, going back many, many years, you look at all the research that's done and nobody actually speaks to the patient. And you have a lot of researchers who are sitting in universities who actually have never met somebody with ADHD. But now funders, the big funders, like to have us involved, and so that's really, really great experience. And one of the projects that I've been involved in, which I'd like to share, sorry, I know I'm going on quite a bit, is there's a project we've been involved in, and you can look it up. It's timespan.eu, and that's looking at the link between ADHD and obesity and diabetes. And that's a really important link, because we're now learning that, amongst obese people, there is a very high percentage of ADHD. So that's really another interesting thing to think about, and what we can do about that, and why that is so. So that's about, we'll discuss more later on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Andrea. And also let us know what you have.
What I have, a nice cup of tea. No, I did say I was diagnosed with ADHD 35.
Okay, perfect.
Over 35 years ago.
Awesome, thank you. I think I forgot. And Naomi, did you say what you had as well?
I did not. I have ADHD.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, just wanted to let everyone know that everyone's represented. We have ADHD, we have ADHD, and we have autistic. So hey, everyone's welcome here. Anyway, okay, so now we're gonna go into our first speaker, who's Beth. So she's gonna, give us a little overview about her research and what she does and how neurodiversity affects intersectionality. And we're gonna come back with our speakers to talk about that and go into detail as well. So stay tuned, guys, and yeah, let's get into it.
I am Dr. Beth Radulski. I am here to talk to you today about the intersectionality of neurodiversity. And I just wanted to give a little introduction to myself as well. So I am an autistic neurodiversity researcher. I am based in Australia, and I'm an academic at La Trobe University. So I recently completed a PhD on the intersectionality of neurodiversity, and I came up with a theory called the Nuerorarchy that tries to help us understand where inequity comes from for neurodivergent people. And of course, neurodivergent women are a big part of that. So I'm going to present that to you today. So we'll start with the concept of intersectionality. So a lot of people assume that intersectionality is all about identity. So if you're standing here at this intersection of many different identities, it might be your race, it might be your sexuality, it might be your gender, the way that these manifest in you as a person. So for example, I'm a woman, I'm autistic, I'm queer, I'm white. Intersectionality, many people think, is all about that surface level identity and how it shapes your interactions with the world. Now, you know, the key kind of theorists in intersectionality over the years have been Kimberly Crenshaw and Patricia Hill Collins. Although many people work with intersectional theory, these are the two kind of foundational scholars in this field. So I've got some quotes to read out from them here. So Collins says that intersectionality is all about the critical insights that race, class, gender, sexuality, ethnicity, nation, ability, and age, and I would add neurotype into that, operate not as unitary or mutually exclusive entities. So it's not just about I'm a woman and then I'm also autistic and then I'm also middle class, but they operate as reciprocally constructing phenomena that shape complex social inequality. And that's quite the mouthful. But what it's basically saying is identity isn't just operating in a separate way, where these separate identities are completely removed from one another. Rather, they're all kind of intermingled. And what it means for me to be, you know, a middle class and white and autistic and queer and a woman, that's not just separate identities. Those things are all connected, and we're going to find out why today. So, you know, on the previous slide, we looked at intersectionality and that really common understanding that it's all about surface level identity. But, and this is a quote from Kimberly Crenshaw, intersectionality is not really primarily about identity. It's about how structures make certain identities the consequence of or the vehicle for vulnerability. So, you know, if you look at this cube that I've got here on the screen, what we looked at on the previous slide was probably the equivalent of standing on one of these gold connectors here and saying, you know, intersectionality is all about what's happening on the surface. It's all about the identity. So, you know, it may be that, you know, your gender and your class and your neurotype and all of that overlap, but it's really all about you as a person. Crenshaw disagrees with that. Crenshaw says it's actually about what's happening underneath that gold button there. It's actually the structure that underlies that. Why would somebody who lives on top of that gold ball, right? Somebody who is, you know, this gold ball here, we'll pick one. That might be a Black queer woman. Somebody who lives on top of that, intersectionality for them is not just about their identity. It's about the structural forces that make that combination of identities really significant. Why does that create better or worse life outcomes across different areas? And how does that relate to the way that our society is built? So Crenshaw continues, if you want to know how many intersections matter, you have to look at context. And context wouldn't just be the gold sphere. Context would be the structure, all the blue and green connecting bands beneath it. What's happening? What kind of discrimination is going on? What are the policies? You know, what are the institutional structures? That might be our workplace, our school, that might be the government, that might be our policing system, that might be our healthcare system that play a role in contributing to the exclusion of some people, but not others. And interestingly, this really emerged to help understand why Black women weren't always legally protected in workplace discrimination suits, because workplaces were able to say, well, we have female employees and we have employees of color, so it doesn't matter that we don't have Black female employees because we keep both of these groups happy. And, you know, Crenshaw was kind of like, well, hang on. We need a theory to understand why the legal system is still discriminating against groups at intersections of those identities. We can't view gender equality as just about having white women in a workplace. We can't view racial equality as just about having men of color in a workplace. What about women of color, right? We have to have a system to help us understand intersectionality. So, you know, what is a social structure? What is, you know, what are those blue beams that hold up our society? Well, there are many of them. You know, we have, and there are many different forms they can take. So if you start with this orange column on the left here, you know, you have culture. Who is valued in your society and why? What are the norms in your culture? You have violence, you know, because social structures can enact violence. They can create dangerous situations for people. You know, for example, if you look at the coloniality example, violence might be slavery. It might be police violence. we have a mode of production. That's how a dominant group creates and retains control in society. Who has the right to determine what the normative culture is? We can look at workplace relations. Is there a pay gap? Are there segregated fields? So, for example, traditionally, men were allowed to be doctors and women were allowed to be nurses, or men were allowed to be businessmen and women were allowed to be their secretaries. We can look at state and government law policy. So, for example, who has the right to migrate, who has the right to be employed in certain workplaces. Do we use Western law? Do we use First Nations law? Does marital law protect men or does it protect women? And these things can change over time. But, certainly our legal system and our government systems, our economy is a big part of what makes up our society. And then at the bottom here, you have your compulsory norms. So who is going to be excluded if they don't adhere to the dominant norms? Now, I want you to think about this in the context of intersectionality and neurodiversity, right? Because if we look back at this previous slide, we can see that there are many different forms inequality can take. But then we need to start asking ourselves, as Crenshaw says, are each of these social structures, coloniality, patriarchy, capitalism, as I would argue Nuerorarchy, neurotypical privilege in a structural context, are each of these individual? Are they only operating in these columns? Right? Are they separate from one another? Or in that structure with all the blue beams together in that cube, are they overlapping? Do they support one another? Could they be structurally sound without supporting one another? And when you look at this in the context of neurodiversity, you see some really interesting things. Traditionally, we've thought that disability, that neurodivergence is all just about you're either abled or you're disabled. You're either neurotypical or you're neurodivergent. And I want to challenge that a little bit, because historically, when we've thought about what it means to have a typical mind, to have typical cognition, to have typical intelligence, we're not just thinking about whether or not you're disabled. Traditionally, we've thought about this in many of those different social structures. So, for example, in the context of capitalism and coloniality, the founding father, or the man we refer to as the founding father of modern day criminology, actually argued that there was a born criminal. He thought that there was a mind. He used to measure, he used to use craniometry, so this measuring people's brains and looking at their facial features to try to make determinations about whether or not they were likely to be criminals. And of course, in his era, criminals were often stereotyped as being people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. So maybe they were more financially marginalized, or they were people from negatively racialized groups. And he actually argued that negatively racialized traits that we might associate with people of color, or traits that we might associate with people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, were criminal. That those traits were making people criminal, and that you could look at someone and know whether or not they were likely to be a criminal based on whether or not they had those traits, as opposed to the dominant Western European traits that were normative at the time and in many ways still are. We also saw the idea of like a different neurotype in the context of gender inequity when it came to women's suffrage. So when we were trying to argue that women should have the right to vote, there were many opponents to this, and they argued that women had physical, intellectual, and psychological flaws, frailty, irrationality, and emotional instability that would prevent them from effectively understanding politics. And the stance was the male brain is just built to understand this. It's the opposite. Instead of being frail, it's strong. Instead of being irrational, it's logical. Instead of being emotionally unstable, it's built to think about reason. And so therefore, men should vote on behalf of the women in their lives, because we're trying to protect women from overburdening their brains. that was a real argument. And in some places, it still is. So, this idea that men have a more evolved brain, and men have a different brain to women. Men are fully human. Women, we're not quite there yet. That's a gendered neurotype, right? We look at this as well in the queer community, the idea that homosexuality was in the DSM until the 60s. We look at the way, many trans people are treated today. And finally, again, reflecting back to that concept of coloniality, many forms of colonization were justified on the basis that European people were stereotyped and thought to be more intelligent, more civilized, more reasoned, and therefore European empires needed to colonize places that didn't have European people living there, because these groups weren't fully human, they weren't fully civilized, and they needed to be brought into the modern era. And so, there's lots of very harmful and negatively racialized stereotypes that grew on the basis that people did not have fully human minds. They didn't have typical cognition. So I'd like to really encourage you all to reflect on this, because if what we know now is that intersectionality isn't about different identities as separate things, it's actually about this structure that we've built in society with ideas like what I've described to you here. These are all things that have built our society, even if they happened a long time ago. They're the foundational groundwork for the society that we have today, and we see evidence of this in many ways today. What does this tell us about neurotypicality? What does this tell us about how we think of the neurotypical mind? It's not just about ability or disability, right? It's actually about all of these things. Traditionally, when we have thought of what it means to have a typical human mind, that mind has looked like a white, European, upper-class, male, cisgendered, heterosexual, and abled mind. And all of these, social forces, racism, colonialism, classism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, ableism, are really built into our society. They're baked in at a structural level. And that comes out in our workplaces, our educational system, our healthcare system, our laws, our policing, our culture. So neurotypical privilege can be held in many different forms. Now, my research studied why autistic people mask and camouflage, and I explored a theory on patriarchy, which, tried to explore how women change their behavior to avoid negative consequences within patriarchy. And Walby, a feminist theorist, found 6 key structures of patriarchy. And I won't go into these in great detail, but patriarchal mode of production was all about the nuclear family, keeping women in the private sphere and keeping men in the public sphere at work. So women were staying home raising the children and managing the household so that men could go and labor. Patriarchal relations in wage labor, again, men were privileged in the workplace. They were allowed to be doctors, businessmen, whatever they wanted, and women had very gender-specific roles where they were supporting men without ever really doing any intellectual work, or as was considered at the time. The patriarchal state, again, it's all about law. Many people would look at marital law and say that for a long time that's been used to oppress women, for example. Male violence, so the idea that, if you go out at night or if you wear certain things, like you're opening yourself up to risk of male violence. It's not the men's fault for perpetuating the violence, but it's, your responsibility as a woman to change your behavior to keep yourself safe from men. Patriarchal relations and sexuality. So this is really about compulsory heterosexuality, the idea that you have to be straight, and homophobia would prevent you, or kind of encourage you not to pursue a relationship outside of being with a man. And it's, overlaps with all of these other areas, because when women weren't allowed to hold certain jobs, how were you going to be financially stable if you didn't have a man providing for you, right? And then in patriarchal culture, you see this idea that men are superior. We have chauvinism, we have misogyny, and the idea that women are inferior to men. And what I found in my PhD is that there are really interesting parallels to this in the context of neurodiversity. So with the neuroarchal mode of production, instead of, women being a surplus to male labor in that nuclear family and providing extra labor to a husband, neurodivergent people are often represented as burdens, as taking something away. Why would we want a neurodivergent employee who we're going to need to give reasonable adjustments to if we could have a neurotypical employee, right? We're seen as a loss of a quality person. We're seen as a burden on the taxpayer. We look at neurotypical relations at work. Neurodivergent people have very high under and unemployment rates. If we want accessibility, we have to ask for adjustments. That's because our workplace isn't built to benefit us. It's built to benefit neurotypical people. It's built around their needs. We have the neuroarchal state. So we see a lot of neurotypical privilege in legal and police settings. So for example, how do you think about innocence in a courtroom? right? You need to perform neurotypicality. If you're not making eye contact, if you're fidgeting, you're not going to look like you're being honest, right? You have to perform neurotypicality in a legal setting. Same with police. We often see police violence against autistic people in particular because their behavior, their body language is read as dishonest, and it's read, for example, as if they are doing something illegal. And so police tend to be a little bit more heavy-handed. We see neurotypical violence, so we see harmful therapies, very high rates of abuse and bullying, compulsory neurotypicality, which is just a fancy way of saying that it's mandatory to try to look and act neurotypical, because if you don't mask and camouflage, you're going to experience a lot of these consequences I've just spoken about. And then finally, we have neuroarchal culture, the idea that neurotypical people are healthy and normal, and that is the right way of being. So I'm going to have to wrap it up here because we're out of time. But if you would like to learn more about the Nuerorarchy, you can visit my website and you can download my entire PhD for free alongside some other research publications. You can also book a coaching session with me if you'd like to discuss this in greater detail. I do offer support with school and work and with navigating neurodivergence more broadly. And if you're interested in a Smash the Nuerorarchy t-shirt like I've got here, you can also find that on my website. So thank you so much to ADHD Baddie for organizing this wonderful event. And I really hope that all of you have been able to find something useful and helpful today.
Wow, that was an amazing speech from Dr. Beth. Got so much insight, and I feel like it was perfect to show us, how systems and structures are set up basically against us on every level, whether it's being neurotypical, whether it's being a woman, whether it's being a different race, or, not being straight. There's just like at every level, there's a system to basically tell us that we're wrong, or tell us that we're bad, or tell us that, we don't belong here. Or, as she said as well, we're seen as a burden on the state, we're a burden in society, and we are not the preferred, we're not the normal, or we do not belong. So going into that, I just want to hear from each of the speakers, what was your key, takeaways from Beth's speech, and if you have any comments. So let's go ahead and start with Sanai.
Yeah, I think what she was talking about in terms of how things were historically, that women just had not fully formed brains, it really does make sense, all the struggles that we're experiencing right now. The fact that when we go to the doctor and we say, this is what I need, I'm like, really, are you sure? And that's also female doctors have judged me in that way as well. I'm sure everyone's experienced that. And so it makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
no, so much insight that, of the structures and systems that are just naturally set up against us. So great. And her work is so important that, we need to be really understanding this and getting this out there so people can, start adjusting their mindset and embracing, the different kind of people, and how, just because the system is already set that one way doesn't mean that's actually the right way. That's just whoever's in power creating it to be that way. So anyway, Hayley, would you like to, make some comments?
Yeah, no, I thought it was an amazing video. I thought it was, Beth was just absolutely incredible. And I think it is, the thing I kept really reflecting on was just how, it's so ingrained into society that people don't recognize those systemic barriers. And one thing I kept reflecting on is where I have seen, these examples in police custody, in healthcare, for example, where again, maybe somebody who was autistic and maybe was a person of color, maybe, for example, experience a meltdown because of sensory overload, as an example. And rather than seeing, somebody sharing I'm autistic as an explanation so that then that person could receive adjustments, it's seen as an excuse. And I think that's something that we often then see elsewhere and in workplaces, and the same behavior, from a white middle-class straight man might be seen as, I don't know, assertive, for example, or the disorganized because he's just got so much on at the moment, is viewed very, very differently when it's maybe a woman with ADHD or autism, she's a person of color, in which case maybe we're more likely to see that person is deemed as unprofessional or unapproachable or careless, disorganized. And it is those completely different standards that affect people on every level in ways that we don't always even recognize day to day. You just get so used to it. But it was a brilliant video. Thank you for sharing.
No, you're so right, Haley. And even as you're talking, I was just thinking this, like, it's just, unfortunately, it's like human nature. Like, people often give empathy and sympathy to people they can relate to. So hence why, you know, there's a lot of white men in the higher position because they see themselves in the other white men. So they're like, okay, we understand. That's why it's known to be like a boys club, you know, because they're all the same. They all have the same, you know, background, you know, they all go to the same golfing place, you know what I mean? So it's like camaraderie. So if they make a mistake, they see it's like as if themselves, like, oh yeah, he's just a lad, like, oh, you know, boys will be boys, like, oh, that's what we all do, you know what I mean? But when it's someone that doesn't look like them, they can't empathize and they can't connect the fact that this person's also human, which is a really sad trait. I feel like it's just a natural, like, oh, this tends, like, humans tend to be like that. We don't, like, some people could only empathize with people that look like them and have the same kind of background, same upbringing, you know. So, and I feel like that's why the world is the way it is, but we're not going to get into that. Anyway, Naomi, let's see you next.
I think what stuck out to me most was talking about all the different levels of oppression, essentially. And certainly if you are female and identify as a person of color and maybe have some sort of other disability, how it all just piles on, specifically related to like emotionality in women. I see that so much now, even in practice, because a lot of, well, and to not go too far into the subject, but we know there's so much relationship to hormones and ADHD. So a lot of these life transitions, when what this woman is likely struggling with is ADHD or a dopamine deficit related to now some hormonal deficits. But we love to say to 12, 13-year-old girls, oh, it's just your hormone. Like we teach them from the beginning, it's just your hormones, but we don't teach them that it can be, and it's quite likely a lot more than that. So teaching young girls early on, it's just your hormones, is so detrimental because we're not opening them up to all the things that are actually happening. And then it becomes burdensome. Oh, well, it's my fault then because it's my hormones. And we're not telling them that there are so many ways that we can help you from a hormonal standpoint and from like a dopamine regulation standpoint. So I thought it was really important that she talked about how this has been happening for centuries now. We've always, oh, women are just overly emotional. And that's not true. We know that a lot of emotional dysregulation comes with ADHD. So why are we not identifying the ADHD and identifying that the emotional dysregulation lives in the ADHD, not just inherently being female? That's not true. So I thought that was really, really good that she pointed that out and really explained it a lot more.
Naomi, yeah, so many factual points, and it even reminds me of our conversation that we first had talking about how because it's not destructive to other people, like they don't care. That's the thing with inattentive ADHD, which most girls end up having either combined inattentive or sometimes they can be hyperactive. But because the default setting or the default stereotype for ADHD is a hyperactive little white boy, so like, you know, if they're not seeing it in that, then they're not acknowledging it because it's destructive to society, they need to deal with it. But because all the issues or a lot of inattentive type is all destructive internally to the individual, they don't care, or they don't even bother to care because it's not affecting. And that's why I feel it links back to all the stats I said in the beginning and our mortality rate, because women also internalize a lot of that pain. Again, because we're told it's just our hormones, it's just women, like, you know, again, there's not even enough research into that and why our hormones are doing that. They just like dismiss it. It's very like women's health is so under researched and dismissed. So yeah, there's so many levels to, you know, what you just said, Naomi, in terms of like how, you know, women are perceived and how our symptoms and our ailments are always just dismissed as anxiety and depression, and, you know, as other things, or hormonal, or, you know, and then we end up getting autoimmune diseases, PCOS, endometriosis that, you know, end up, you know, affecting us 10 times more. Like, yeah, anyway, I could go on. But anyway, Andrea, your turn.
I think you've all pretty much said it all, but I was just thinking while you're all talking and about this thing about the male hierarchy. When we look at ADHD going back many, many years, it was very much a male thing. So for men to be judging us women, you know, we need to talk for you, we need to vote for you, we need to control you, all that kind of stuff, that just may have been their ADHD. And it's an emotional dysregulation problem. You know, they're also emotionally dysregulated, and but in a different way. But you know what, at the end of the day, we are the stronger sex. That's what I firmly believe, that we are the stronger sex. We are the more powerful sex. And look how we brought ourselves up. Look what we're doing. Look how we are now, you know, the diagnostic rates for women is equal to men. You know, so many more powerful women in the world. Very much so. So, yay. You know.
Amen to that. We're taking over. That's
Yeah.
the plan. And that's why that's why I started this, because the visibility and the understanding of having us in spaces and leading stuff, especially when it comes to neurodivergence, and like having organizations that's run by neurodivergents to help neurodivergents, because we know us as much as anyone else, because we actually live that. So, and we have the capacity to do so. We're not incapacitated. So yeah, anyway, Andrea, go ahead.
In my 30 years of working with families with ADHD, we've done a lot of research about the divorce rates, the separation rates. They're quite high amongst parents of children with ADHD. But hey, who's the one that's run away? Who's the one that's left behind, raising those very complex, difficult children? Let's be clear. I mean, look, that's not 100%. There are some amazing men who've taken over, because possibly the wives just are severely affected. But on the whole, in the work that I've been doing, so many single mums raising very difficult children, and they're like lionesses. They are absolutely like lionesses. And part of my role and my job is that for those who aren't, I have helped them become lionesses. And one day I'd like to bring on here one of the lionesses that I've supported. She's the most amazing woman. When she first came to me, she was like, she just cried all the time. She was totally, so she couldn't do anything. Now she's practically helping me, just turned around completely. And it can be done. We've just got to show them, she has ADHD as well. Got to show them where their strengths are.
100%. And to jump off what you just said, instead of her having ADHD, which I was going to say already, a lot of these parents also are neurodivergent because it's hereditary. So
absolutely. That's how I got diagnosed. And back in the day, because as I said, doing this over 30 years, the women that I was seeing were getting diagnosed because when their children were diagnosed, they recognized it themselves. And that's what happened to me. That's, I mean, it just totally explained all the failures through my childhood, all my relationship problems, everything. Just explained it. And once you understand it, you take ownership of it, and you can do something
100%.
about it. You got to know what it is before you can help yourself.
Exactly. And that's why I started this place, because like if I just knew this earlier, I would have saved so much time, would have had so much help. I could have helped myself, because I hyperfixated on getting better and understanding myself, so that I can there was a thing I always used to say, that I need to understand myself, because I need to understand myself the most, because I know that people misunderstand me. So I need to make sure that I understand me as much as I can, because people are just so prone to misunderstanding where I'm coming from. So I try my best to understand other people and understand myself, because story of our life are always misunderstood. But anyway, let's get into the questions, because I'm so first question, I'm going to open to everyone else, if anyone else wants to talk and discuss on it. As a psychiatric nurse practitioner, what are the most shocking health disparities you've seen affecting ADHD women in your practice?
Much of what we've been talking about already, specifically in women of color, it's a concept that they haven't even thought about it. Most times when I do diagnose women of color, when they come in the office, ADHD is not on their mind at all. But as I'm going through my assessment, I'm seeing all of these like hallmarks. And as a woman of color myself, I think from a cultural standpoint, I see things that maybe other providers might not see, just because I obviously know the culture better. And when I bring it up to a woman of color, the shock on their face of like, well, no, like kids get that, right? When I explain what this means and we can look at ways that it's affecting their life, I see so often like this light bulb come on in their face, like, oh my God, is that what that is? Like, I thought I was just a lazy person, or, my friends or my family or whomever has always just said I was lazy or flighty or just irresponsible and all these things. And they've never even thought about it. Like, it's not a conversation even a lot of times in particular cultures or neighborhoods. So the disparity is there because I think we're not educating enough about it in certain cultures and neighborhoods. To your point, more so from a childhood standpoint, are children of color being diagnosed more? Perhaps yes, but in more of a negative way, where the diagnosis is coming along with behavioral problems. And so we're just identifying this behavior problem, but not truly getting to the bottom of what the issue is and getting the supports as we would like, or as we perhaps see in other cultures or races. So disparity, I think, from an adult standpoint, but also as well in the pediatric and adolescent population. So it's widespread, unfortunately, but part of what I do and what I think this whole platform is doing today is helping to dispel some of these disparities and helping persons of color understand that it's okay to say I'm not okay. It's okay to say that I'm struggling, and even if I appear successful, I'm struggling, and I would like somebody to listen to me about this. So again, I appreciate you for putting this together and for letting us speak on this.
Naomi, like, you took the words right out of my mouth in terms of, like, I know I look okay, but I'm not okay. Like, especially like creating this platform and everything, because this is like my hyperfixation. I feel like my calling. I feel like when you're neurodivergent, you're really good at one thing, or like you're really good at what you're supposed to do. And I tend to be really good at, you know, doing things like this, but it doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean I'm not struggling. It doesn't mean I don't need help. But because we perform, especially when it comes to masking, like we're so good at like performing neurotypicalness or being, you know, okay, because one, women are also told not to be a burden onto people. You know what I mean? We don't want to be a burden. We don't want to, you know, people like, you know, so I used to do this thing where I used to just smile all the time because people always I used to be depressed and have anxiety. I didn't know why I did, but I used to just smile because I was tired of people asking me, are you okay? Because I wasn't okay, but how do I didn't have the words to describe it, but so I'll just like have a stuck, like resting smile face on my face just for people to leave me alone. And I just, you know, felt so invisible because people thought, you know, I was smiling because I had no issues, I had no problems. When meanwhile, inside I'll have turmoil, I'm stressed out and anxious, and I don't know why. So yeah, like you hit the nail on the head with that. So does anyone else, you know, want to like take a stab at this question? Get the question back up again, just in case any of the speakers wanted to add the 2 pence. If not, we'll just move on to the next one. Okay, yeah, don't worry. Okay, let's move on to the next one. We'll do that for Andrea. You've been advocating for 30 plus years. How have you seen healthcare system for women specifically during this time?
Well, let me just take things right the way back. You know, I remember before I was diagnosed and before my children, you know, I suffered a lot with depression, and I think a lot of women were suffering with depression because we didn't know what the problem was. We knew that we were intelligent. We knew, but we couldn't organize our homes. We couldn't get our children ready for school. We couldn't, you know, get the washing ready, do the housework and all those kind of things, and couldn't get the food on the table. So there's like these feelings of failure which lead to depression. And I can remember going to my GP and he put me on Prozac. And the thing about Prozac was what it did for me. I took the Prozac and I went back home, and suddenly, you know, I felt happy. I didn't have these feelings of failure. But the problem was people around me were still struggling because I still wasn't doing the cooking, the cleaning, the housework and all the rest of it. But it's just that I didn't care. And that was the difference. So it didn't really help. But then when I was diagnosed with ADHD and went on to medication, it was just such a game changer. And I started to meet other women in the same position, you know, coming to me for help with their kids and telling me how depressed they were. And I say, well, you know, maybe you've got ADHD, and supporting them getting the diagnosis. And in those days, I think it was a little bit easier because the clinicians, everybody who was working in this field were very, very dedicated to it. And it was much easier to get the help because the clinicians around were all, you know, they were all really, really involved. Today, it's so much different because we now just have our jobbing psychiatrists, we have, you know, doctors, psychiatrists, etc., who are, it's just part of their everyday job, and it's not really a focus. And I don't know how you guys feel, but I don't believe that they have the experience and the expertise to help us. But, you know, now we've got this, you know, huge increase in diagnosis, and I'm just hoping, and, you know, it's mostly driven by us. I think everything is driven now by us women forging our way ahead. But the other thing I just want to bring into that, probably going off topic here, when you look at a lot of research that's done, a lot of the research is done by looking at thousands of clinical data from various registers, and I can remember, you know, research coming out saying, oh, you know, ADHD, children with ADHD have depressed mothers, and therefore the depression has caused their children to have ADHD, looking at it as a causal thing. And I'd always said, well, hang on, maybe the mothers have got ADHD and it's undiagnosed. So maybe the research is skewed. And so that's why I often wonder about some of the research that we're seeing and some of the outcomes that we're seeing. Are they actually accurate? And that's a discussion that we can have.
No, 100%, Andrea. And yeah, thank you for sharing that in terms of, you know, having so many women that have gone undiagnosed because of, you know, as we said before, the lack of taking our condition seriously or understanding the condition because of the lack of research. And just like me, just like you, just like all the women on this panel, you know, we're all advocating for, you know, the change. We're all advocating for the implement of our rights and to get more research into this, so a lot of women don't go underdiagnosed or left behind. Any other women on the panel want to touch on that before I move on to the next question? Let me know. No? Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next one. So this one's for Sanai. As someone involved in politics and a woman of color, how do you see intersectionality playing out in neurodivergent women experiences within the system and in your practice as well, I would say, as an ADHD coach?
Yeah, well, basically everything is to do with intersectionality. Part of the reason my diagnosis was missed, and certainly for a lot of women of colour as well, is we're often socialised to fit in and to mask, and we'll see what works from what other people do and think, okay, that's how I need to behave in society. And even though it's exhausting, we just carry on. And for me, especially someone from an immigrant background, you know, I was taught from a young age, keep your head down, work hard, don't make a fuss. So of course, I'm not going to speak up, am I? I'm not going to ask for support. And it's something that I see a lot in neurodivergent women. And I mean, one of the examples for me in school was that assumption that I just wasn't trying hard enough, rather than thinking, hang on, this person needs an assessment for a diagnosis, they need support. And it's all down to what we've been talking about before, those stereotypes, you know, the white boy, either when it comes to ADHD or autism. And there's this story I shared in my TEDx talk that I did when I was going to apply for university. And my head of sixth form basically shouted at me down the corridor in front of everyone saying, you're not going to get into your university choices, you know, you need to pick other universities. I didn't listen, fortunately, and I got into 3 out of 5 of my choices. But it's that sort of thing of just not being believed, not giving support. And I've seen it very much in the workplace as well, again, with people I coach and also with myself, that being told that you're either too much or not enough, you talk too much or you're a wallflower. And even especially in politics as well, in the legal profession, where you've very much got a male-dominated field, white men, cisgender men, definitely neurotypical. And when you don't see yourself in politics, you don't see yourself in members of the cabinet or even in local politics, then you're not really going to feel supported by those systems. And then, yeah, healthcare as well is a big one. I think a lot of the stats that you shared really show exactly what's going on. We go to the doctor with something and we're just not believed because we're a woman or a woman of colour and so on, and neurodivergent as well. And an example that I like to talk about is I once had a urinary tract infection a couple of years ago. It hadn't cleared up with antibiotics. Went to the doctor just said I had COVID. I didn't push it. I believed them. And things got worse. Fortunately, my husband pushed me to go to the doctor again. I was just going to leave it, stay at home. And it turned out I had the early signs of sepsis. So if it wasn't for my husband, things could have been really catastrophic. So yeah, that's something that's happening to neurodivergent women all the time, neurodivergent women of colour. Because we're not believed, we just don't speak up, and things can be pretty disastrous. Yeah.
So now, everything you've said, I literally relate to a T, from the school, not trying hard enough, from being too much to not being enough at the same time, to, trying to fit in and being a wallflower, to being happy with everyone, talking too much. Like literally it's like we've lived the same life. And that's why I love platforming and speaking to other neurodivergent women, because it's like you realize you're not alone. And even I'm so like sorry for that last part in terms of like the medical, like I as well, I think I probably told you on our first chat, and how, you know, I was treated in the medical field, and like how I was dismissed, and, you know, how there was so much negligence when it came to, you know, managing me and dealing with me, and like the way I had to like cry in front of doctors that looked at me like I was dead, they didn't care what I'm going through. Like I'm, you know, trying to, you know, when I got diagnosed for PCOS, they were just like, okay, we see that stress induced, just don't stress. And they just kind of and they left me alone. I was just like, hello, like if I knew not how to stress, like I wouldn't be stressing. I need help. But like they just don't, like, obviously they don't have the capacity to care, because obviously underfunded, understaffed, and all that other stuff. But it still like, this is my life. Like this is health. Like there's no care in healthcare anymore. Like it's just so disgusting. It's like, this is people's lives we're talking about. And that's why, like, I will never stop talking about the stats, and that, you know, they don't care until it's too late. And even I feel with these stats out with the, you know, the mortality rate, they still don't care, because one, they not know about it enough. And I feel like if they know about the mortality rate, especially as it attributes to women, we can start taking more seriously, especially when it comes to politics. Because, you know, we had the Labour trying to do an inquiry to see why there's an overdiagnosis, and it recently got debunked, and say, no, people are not being overdiagnosed. We've been undiagnosed for so long, and no one's taking it seriously. So it's just insulting, you know, that people think that we're making it up, we're putting it on, like that we're not, you know, like, yeah, I could go on forever about that, but yeah, I'm not going to. But yeah, it's crazy. Does anyone else want to add? If not, we'll move on to the next one. Here we go. Okay, cool. For Hayley, this one's for Hayley. In your practice, how do you see race, class, and gender intersecting with the ADHD diagnosis treatment?
So I suppose in my current practice, so I'm not currently in the NHS anymore, and working in that kind of like psychological practitioner role, but definitely it impacts treatment in terms of like how people are literally treated at work, and how able they are or aren't to access things like accommodations. And I mean, I was just reflecting then on what Sonai was talking about, you know, like that sense of being like, you're too much, you're not enough, what am I expected to be? And that being, you know, that pressure to kind of mold and bend and fit yourself to try and adapt. And, you know, particularly when we see, you know, like women in new positions, and we're very, very driven and passionate and care and really want to do well, we might put all of our time and energy and capacity into being what we think is expected of us, and longer term we might not be able to sustain that in the same way. And as has already been touched on, I think by Naomi, like people might not even be aware of the fact that they might be neurodivergent, and they might assume that their experiences reflect their personal inadequacies and their personal failings. And as everyone's mentioned already, you know, women are more likely, you know, we're socialized to display those very pro-social behaviors, and those, you know, we're more likely to be very, very agreeable and people pleasing. And then when we combine that with things like the rejection sensitivity, we might find that people are more likely to keep agreeing, even impulsively. Somebody asks you to help with something at work, even if you don't have the capacity to give it, we just agree on the spot, and these things maybe aren't sustainable. Also, again, because of things like you said, women and the intersects with like our hormones and health, we know that, you know, capacity can fluctuate over the course of the month, or your menstrual cycle, which again, because of things like PCOS, might not be as regular and predictable as it is for other people. And so we might see those like booms and busts in people's energy levels, their ability to focus, their motivation. We tend to find in workplaces that again, because of those fluctuations, there are then periods of time where women try to overcompensate and work even harder than other people. And again, if your identity, you come from a background where you experience multiple levels of marginalization, those pressures increase, and that, you know, we're more likely to see things like imposter syndrome, we're more likely to see things like burnout in the workplace, we're more likely to see that people aren't listened to or believed when they say that they're struggling, when they say that they're overwhelmed. And because of that fluctuating capacity, we often hear managers say, well, they're fine at other times, and so why is it now a problem? And there might be a reluctance to you know, give people accommodations because of those unconscious biases that people might not recognize that they have. Again, people from different backgrounds and women of color might be held to different standards, again, in terms of what's expected of them and how they're supposed to behave and perform, you know, in terms of like your emotions. Even, you know, I was thinking about a couple of examples of workplaces where we've had comments about how somebody is seen as unapproachable, and realistically what they were talking about was someone wasn't essentially performing and masking when they were in the middle of a task, and they weren't actually in any way aware of the fact that they were being perceived socially and assessed socially. And then we also think about things like class again, and how that you know, plays a role in terms of how people contextualize your behavior. And again, we might see that, again, for somebody who is perceived as middle class, their behavior might be met with a bit more compassion or understanding, again, a reflection of how busy they are, how many demands they're facing. Whereas the same impulsive behavior, for example, or difficulties with organizational memory might be perceived from someone of like a working class background as being unprofessional. And then we think about, again, the intersex of all of those things and how hard it can be because of waiting lists and you know, judgments and biases that healthcare professionals have, and then things like the cost that comes with trying to go privately. If you're in a workplace that, you know, pushes for you to have a diagnosis to receive adjustments, even if you identify as neurodivergent, and disclosing that you even self-identify and you suspect you're neurodivergent, is such an exposing thing to do and can make people feel extremely vulnerable, because it doesn't guarantee that you're met again with compassion, support, understanding, and all of those things, like we said, mean it's less likely actually that women, and again with those intersex, like a woman of colour from a working class background, is going to feel able to advocate for herself and then get the adjustments that she needs. And there might be almost perceived a higher burden of proof, almost again like having to prove that you have a diagnosis that just might not be accessible or reachable for you at that point. And just to kind of touch on that, for anyone who is watching from within the UK, legally you aren't required to have a diagnosis, a formal diagnosis, to receive adjustments, and you should be entitled to and should be in receipt of adjustments, even if it's suspected that you have a disability. And yeah, we have sent some resources, so if you scan those QR codes that Kay shares later, again, there's stuff there around like trying to look after yourselves, but there's just so many barriers, and like everyone said, like it affects your entire life. It's not just your work and just your health and just your ability to run a household, it's everything, and it's how fundamentally we feel about ourselves and how worthy, capable we are, which impacts our ability to advocate for ourselves in all these different arenas. So yeah.
No, that was literally so, like, there's so many little nuggets that I'm trying to remember, but that was so amazing, Hayley. Thank you for sharing. Like, one thing I want to start with is the first what you're talking about, energy changing, because as someone who's chronically fatigued and like is trying to like get back my energy, I've been supplementing. It's been so hard for me to be considered, even just in organizing this event and trying to do everything on time. I've learned to have grace with myself and not beat myself up, because before I would have, you know, been super hard on myself for procrastinating and, you know, all my executive dysfunction. But then now that I have my diagnosis, I can give myself more grace. And that's one thing I really appreciate being diagnosed ADHD, because as soon as I knew, okay, this is what it is and there's actually help, I was crying, because I was like, so this was the answer, all this, you know what I mean? So like that energy thing is so serious, especially as you get older. I remember being able to, you know, have so much energy when I was younger and to go things and go out and stay up all night. Now, you know, after burnout, post burnout, it's just not the same. It's not possible. And like you know, there's so many people that go through burnout, ADHD, neurodivergent burnout. It's so crazy. And it's so like, there's so many of us and no one takes it seriously. And I feel like that's something, again, that should be, you know, accounted for, taking seriously. And I also want to go back to what you said in terms of advocating for ourselves. I think it's so tiring and draining to advocate for ourselves as well, especially when we get so much backlash, especially personally me as someone who's advocated for myself through, you know, mistreatment and, you know, errors that has been done with me and, you know, my actual diagnosis, and like errors that they put on my, like, it's so draining to have to always constantly fight, because, you know, I feel like we've been fighting our whole life. So that's another thing that is like, yes, I completely understand. And what I want to section into asks Naomi, which is a question that actually wasn't on the thing, but something that I feel like touches on what Hayley said in terms of like understanding and the shame that comes with even admitting that you have ADHD, or like, because it doesn't always guarantee accommodation, doesn't always guarantee, you know, sometimes it's just like Dr. Beth said in the video, it actually works to our detriment, because people are like, oh, I'd rather put an employer a neurotypical person because they need less accommodation, they need less work. But I also want to add that in an intersectionality part with Naomi, and talk about how that also reflects in race. As someone who has, you know, background, I have an African background, neurodiversity is like, or being neurodivergent or any kind of disability, but especially invisible ones, is seen as like very taboo still, very like, I don't want nothing to do with it. Like, you know, my parents personally have been like, oh, God forbid, you know, our child doesn't have that. You know, I mean, there's very still a much stigma against the Black community, against disability in general. But when it comes to especially invisible disability, that's a big thing. And that stops a lot of people getting diagnosed. It almost stopped me getting diagnosed because at the time I was too young to get diagnosed. My parents just didn't want me to have that stigma or have that thing. There was like, they'll discriminate against you at work. You know, you won't get a job. You know, it'll be hard for you. I was like, no, this country, they support, they can get help. You know what I mean? So I want you to like comment on that. And, you know, especially when it comes to race and like from certain ethnic groups, neurodiversity is just like, don't you dare diagnose my child with that. You know what I mean? I don't want to have that stigma on my child or on me as an adult.
Oh, absolutely. That's a conversation I have with African American parents often. I had recently a young man whose mom brought him in and believed that we had some concerns about ADHD. Dad was not on board at all. Mom is also a clinician, so was maybe a bit more understanding about what we were looking for. But Dad agreed to let treatment move forward. I didn't meet Dad at that point, but at the next appointment, Dad actually took off of work to come to the appointment. And he sat in and he said, you know, I didn't believe in this stuff when we all started this. You know, I was raised to think you just, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you do the things, like you make life work. But my child is different. And I believe this now because he saw such a huge change. We got to start right before the school year started for this young man. And one of their struggles was getting out of the house in the morning, remembering all your things, getting him to get out of the bed. So Dad goes in to look for him and he's not in his bed. Well, Dad he's like, okay, what is he doing? Like, because he's so used to having to constantly work with this kid to get him up. Well, son was already up, downstairs, dressed, right? He was waiting for Dad at that point. And Dad's like, who is this kid? Like, and so the concept, I think sometimes in cultures, trying to get past that first step, parents have to see the benefit. Because and I say to adults that come in often, and I say you have to give your parents some grace, because parents are not built to see anything negative in their child. They don't want to see anything negative in their child. And in the African American culture, in years past and even now, but certainly in years past, like in slavery, historically in slavery times, you could not be seen as weak. And so it was so important for parents to tell their kids, you are never weak, you are strong, you can do all the things, because weakness meant being sold away. It meant possibly being killed. It meant lots of things that were not good. And that still lives, I think, in our culture now. You cannot appear weak in any way. So parents rebel against that so much. But trying to get everyone to a comfortable space of, in the same way that if I told you that your child needed glasses, you'd allow them to have glasses. You wouldn't say that, you know, you should just be able to see better, just make it work. You would allow them to have glasses. It's the same thing. We're just allowing an accommodation or allowing a treatment intervention that will make life easier for your child. So I try to bridge it from that standpoint, and I try to meet the parents where they are and acknowledge that I realize why you're worried about this. I realize that you internally, you never want your child to be seen as weak. And I realize that this comes from literally centuries of traumas that have put us in this place. But we don't want to continue to endorse that trauma. We don't want our continuing generations to have to suffer all of those things that happened back then. We can change now. And it's only fair for the kids that we change now. So that's kind of how I frame it in trying to support.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Naomi. That was perfect. And I feel like that segues is that we actually need to go to our break now, guys. So we're perfectly in time for that. And so we're going to now take where after the break, we're going to come back and we're going to do a little quiz and then get back into more active steps for individuals on how you can actually help your ADHD and talk more on detail about that. So please, guys, go get a glass of water, go and, you know, get a snack, stretch your legs. I'm going to put a 10-minute timer on the screen. So there's going to be like a bit of background music, and the timer will count down, and at the end of the timer we'll be back. So don't go anywhere, just leave, you know, minimize the tab, mute it, and set a timer for 10 minutes so that you can come back if you are going away and you don't want to hear the little background music. But there's cool little color videos that you could like kind of just stare into, which I did intentionally. Let's go ahead and start the timer, and I'll see you guys after. Bye. Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you guys had a good break. And yeah, it's time to do our mini trivia. So yeah, let's just stop this music first because it's distracting me. Or is this just me? Oh shoot. Okay, yeah, sorry. Hi guys, my bad. I was locked into another screen, so I kept hearing the music even though they already left. But anyway guys, welcome back. Hope you had a good break. Let me know if you can hear me and see me okay. I can actually see the chat now, so I'll actually shout you guys out. I'm going to shout out a couple people that I've already seen has been chatting. So we got Miss T91. Hey girl, thanks for tuning in. We got TPJM02. Shout out. We've been seeing you commenting in. Thank you so much for engaging. Who else do we have? We have Fira Allo 28. Thank you so much for joining us. Leave in the chat if you're here and you're back from break. Let me know what you did, or if you got like a snack or a glass of water. I got a bottle of water because I've been yapping so much. My mouth is dry. It's it's a bit of a long time to talk a lot, so I'm happy I needed that break for myself as well. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into the trivia and see who can get all the questions right. I'm really excited for this. I love a bit of pub quiz trivia stuff. It's a super easy questions. It's gonna be based around like ADHD stuff. And yeah, what you have to do is basically leave the emoji in the chat of what you think the answer is. So yeah, let's get into it. We have 4 quick questions, and then yeah, we're gonna get back to the show. Okay, so first question, guys. What is the percentage of girls with ADHD that are misdiagnosed with anxiety or depression? First, is it a diamond emoji? Put a diamond emoji if you think it's 30% of people. Put a lightning emoji if you think it's 50% of people. And if you think it's 70% of people, then put a flower emoji in the chat. I'm going to give you guys a couple seconds so I can see some people come through. So as we already discussed today, women with ADHD or neurodivergent also often get diagnosed with anxiety and depression. I know ADHD women and autistic women normally get diagnosed with like BPD or OCD. And that's something that's always common for people that are neurodiverse. We also, with that women that are neurodiverse, we often get misdiagnosed for something else. So what percentage of people do you think is the answer? So we got some flowers in the chat. We got a lightning bolt in the chat. Okay, we got a few people. Let's see who is right. Come on, guys, put in your answers in the chat so we can see who wins. No cheating, even though there's no prize. But okay, guys, let's just be, everyone. Let's keep it cool. Let's keep it cute. But anyway, can I get a drum roll, please, for the answer? And the answer is 70% of people. So well done to everyone who put a flower in the chat. So the not so fun fact is that a lot of women, 7% of women with ADHD get diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And yeah, that's why we get diagnosed so much later in life, which is something we've also discussed on the chat and the other speakers have actually mentioned. But anyway, clap for yourself for those who got it right, and keep score because we're going to see. Keep score, so we're going to see how many you've got right in the chat. So guys, make sure you participate. So the next question is, ADHD brains have lower levels of which neurotransmitter? This is so easy, guys. If you don't know this, I don't know for you guys. Come on, this is like so easy. So the first one, if you think it's serotonin, put a diamond emoji in the chat. If you think it's dopamine, put a lightning emoji in the chat. And if you think it's cortisol, put a flower emoji in the chat. I know it might take a while to find these emojis. So sorry, guys, I'm going to give you time and I'm going to yap a bit more so I can see some answers in the chat. So yeah, but yeah, I feel like what the answer to this question is talked about so much. It's such a buzzword in society. Everyone's talking about a deficit in this or overload in this, and understanding this and that how people, especially ADHD people, can be low in this is how it affects our executive dysfunction and how is it dysfunction of executive function? No, it's dysfunction, right? Yep, sorry. Anyway, executive dysfunction and, you know, an ability to get ourselves motivated, the ability to, you know, to be, you know, have energy. It affects so many things. And, you know, people just think it's to do with like, you know, social media or certain things. But yeah, this is a really important neurotransmitter that, you know, gets a lot of hype. It's a buzzword. You know what I mean? So I'm just waiting a bit more to see who else is, you know, left comments to see what the answer is. So, okay, we got a couple lightning strikes, okay? Okay, anyway, let's do a drum roll, please. And the answer is dopamine. So everyone who put lightnings in the chat, you got it right. Well done, guys. Everyone knows, you know, dopamine differences, you know, everyone's talked about dopamine detoxes and how, you know, we get dopamine hits from scrolling on social media. It is, you know, something that's very important for ADHD people to, you know, get enough dopamine so that we can actually function and feel alive. So yeah, that is, you know, the main neurotransmitter that, you know, affects our ADHD. So yeah, anyway, next question. Ooh. So what does RSD stand for? Does it mean repetitive stress disorder? If you think it's that, put a diamond emoji in the chat. If you think it's rejection sensitive dysphoria, put a lightning in the chat. And if you think it means rapid sleep dysfunction, put a flower in the chat. Let me know, guys. Let me know what you think the answer is. So RSD, this is something that a lot of neurodivergents, whether you're autistic, ADHD, suffer with. Mainly, I'm trying not to give it away, mainly because, you know, we've been like I feel like I'm giving it away. But yeah, it's something that a lot of neurodivergent people experience because we're so different. Yeah, no, there's no way I can say this without actually giving it away. But I feel like if you know, you know anyway. So like, it doesn't even need to be like that deep anyway. But okay, anyway, so I'm gonna, you know, let guys leave it in the chat a bit more. Oh, wait, did we just do the drum roll? Okay, yeah, drum roll. Sorry, we just did drum roll. So the answer is rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So yes, this is something that a lot of like a not so fun fact, 99% of people with ADHD experience RSD, and that is basically emotional pain that comes when it comes to being rejected. So I'm pretty sure much all of us have experienced this, whether it's with friends, whether it's at a job, whether it's, you know, in life, in, you know, family, feeling like the black sheep, you know, just because our brain works differently and we're just so misunderstood by ourselves, by the world. And yeah, rejection can be really, you know, can affect us 10 times more. It can manifest as physical pain. And as someone who, you know, used to suffer with that a lot, especially when you're masking, because, you know, when you already know you're not yourself and you're trying so much hard to people please and to, you know, perform this idea of what you think you should be like, and people still reject you, it's like a slap in the face. So it hurts 10 times more as well, because you're trying your best and it still doesn't work. So that's why I just gave up on masking, because even when I did mask, it still didn't work. Like, people still thought I was weird. So it is what it is. So we just got to be yourself, my love. Just got to be yourself. Anyway, I'm going to stop yapping and go to the next slide. So this is the last and final question, guys. So what is the ADHD tax that costs us the most money? Is it A, forgetting to cancel free tools? Is it B, buying something twice because we forgot that we have it already? Or is it C, missed late fees and missed payments? So put an emoji, diamond emoji for forgetting to cancel. B, a lightning strike, buying the same thing twice. I know I do that a lot as well. And C, flower, late fees and missed payments. So let us know which one you think it is in the chat, because, you know, due to our forgetfulness, which I really find weird with ADHD, because like I can remember this random day like 20 years ago in clear detail, but I can't remember where I left my keys, or where, like, literally today I lost my supplements that I just ordered from Amazon. And it was just like, where did I put this thing? And I realized I left it in another room. It's like, oh my gosh, like the way I just lose misplaced stuff all the time. I have to put bells on my keys, so anytime I shake my bag, I can hear it that's in my bag, or I know it's there or not there, or if it drops, because I've lost my keys so many, my cards, my keys, my wallet, my Oyster card, bus pass, so many times in my life. PE kits, this and that. It's not fun. It's really not fun. Like, Yeah. But anyway, let's get into the answer. The answer is, it's a trick question. It's a trick question. It's all of them. I just drink water before I choke. Okay, I'm talking too much. So yeah. So we suffer through all of this stuff. This is what ADHD tax does for everyone. Like, I wanted to, spice it up a bit to get you guys confused, to see if anyone would get the question right. But anyway, guys, let me know in the chat if you got all 4 right, if you got 3 out of 4, 2 out of 4, 1 out of 4, and at least, well, now you know for your next trivia, you have these stats. So yeah. Anyway, I'm just gonna have a minute to cough because I feel a tickle in my throat and it gets out of me. So yeah, now we're going into section 2, where we're gonna bring our speakers back on stage, and we're gonna be talking about more about how we can support ourselves, strategies to actually support ourselves, because I'm very much a person, I don't like to talk, I like to do. So yeah, there's a time for talking, there's a time for taking action. Hence why I've created this, organization, I've created this event, and I've brought everyone together, and I have someone who, also is very proactive and, really wants to help myself and not be a victim to my circumstances, and push or like find ways to help myself in whatever way capacity, because I realized unfortunately no one's gonna help. Like when I went to the doctors, when I went to private and public healthcare, they just didn't care enough to support me or even pay attention the way I did. So I was like, no one's gonna care about me as much as I care about me and about my health, and I can't keep feeling like this every single day. So I need to do something about it. So I did, and I researched, and I want to help people help themselves as well. So this section is going to be all about ways that we can support ourselves. So I'm going to be asking questions to the speakers about strategies and techniques that maybe work for them, and that come up for you as well. And yeah, then after that we're going to go into Q&A, where you guys can ask questions for yourself, and we can go through those questions. So okay, let's get back into questions, and we'll start with our first questions. I'm gonna do I'm gonna back behind the scenes, guy. Wait for me. I'm not gonna pick in order. I'm gonna see a different question. Okay. For Andrea, what is the most important thing a newly diagnosed ADHD woman should know about navigating the healthcare system and navigating healthcare when it comes to the ADHD? We need to unmute you, by the way, as well.
What should they know? Well, I think the most important thing is, when you get a diagnosis, is make yourself the most knowledgeable person about your condition. I mean, you've got to really research it and get as much information as you can. Join groups, speak to other people. I think that's the first thing. Equip yourself. Be very much self-aware. So I think that's important. It's also important to know that there are people there to help you. You're not alone. Really important to know that you're not alone. There's a huge community out there to support and help you. Reach out. Very important to reach out if you're stuck, if you're in trouble, if you need help. Reach out, because from my experience, the women with ADHD that we've all been involved with have all been incredibly supportive and helpful. We are your family. So that's just don't suffer in silence. Very important.
That is such a good point. Thank you so much for that, Andrea. And that is why as well I'm so passionate in the sense of building this community, because I know what it's like to feel like you have no one, you're alone, no one understands you. And yeah, it's important to be connected with other neurodivergent people, because honestly there's times I felt like I was crazy when it came to I just felt like I was an alien, and yeah, I'm alone and I'm the only one that feels this way. And create this community, and being a part of meeting you guys, and like seeing how similar we all are, and all the experiences that are similar. It's really validating, and having that your experience validated, I feel like it's such a healing thing to have and to experience, especially because we've been invalidated and told we're weird and wrong for our whole life. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Andrea. I'm gonna go for Ooh, let's see which questions. Okay, so I want to go to Sanai on this question, and it's not one particularly that was in the questions I sent you guys in advance, but when it comes to like being a mother and pregnancy and how that affected you as a neurodivergent woman and all the things that, you know, got blindsided, because I know there's a lot of women that suffer with ADHD women neurodivergent already suffer with PPMD, but even when you're pregnant and postpartum depression, I'm feeling that depression, and I don't know your experience with it, but, you know, I just wanted to, you know, hear a bit of your insights on, you know, for the mothers in our community and, you know, people that are watching online that, you know, may need some validation and understanding about, you know, or people that are planning to have kids, you know, how it has affected you and, you know, things that helped you on that journey as you discovered, so no one's really blindsided. So if you could share a little bit about that, I would, you know, really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, in terms of what helped me, that'll be interesting because I couldn't find any information that was relevant to me, but I'm trying to do that with spreading awareness, my blog and everything. But yeah, I think I wasn't prepared for how pregnancy and motherhood would impact me specifically as a neurodivergent woman. You know, people talk about or joke about even baby brain, and when you already struggle with executive function, that's a whole lot worse. It's a completely different level, to the point where it's not a joke anymore. You know, I really struggled with my memory. I struggled with focus whilst I was pregnant, and then my work suffered as a result. But instead of speaking up, which, you know, I've already spoken about how much of a struggle that is for women like us, I just try to carry on as normal, especially, and I've heard pregnant clients saying this as well, my coaching clients saying that when you don't look pregnant yet, you know, pre-20 weeks or whatever it is, you feel all the more that you need to just carry on as normal because no one can tell what's going on for you. But that was the hardest time for me. I struggled with hyperemesis, so that's the severe morning sickness. Couldn't keep anything down. Being autistic, I already have food aversion, so those were heightened whilst pregnant. So yeah, it was quite sort of dangerous. I couldn't eat and drink, and I was trying to work whilst doing that. So I made mistakes. Again, felt that I had to make up for it rather than getting support. So we'd planned this holiday of a lifetime, my husband and I, because we'd been together for 10 years, traveling around France and Italy by train. But there I was on the train doing work, basically drafting documents, sending emails, because I've made this mistake. I can't get support from someone. I need to fix it. And just even the way pregnancy care is, you know, you're given appointments at short notice. I had my midwife changed on me last minute, just as my pregnancy became high risk right at the end. My midwife wasn't available that I'd seen and built a rapport with, and I had to see someone else that I didn't have that rapport with. So that was stressful as well. And in the end, I had quite a traumatic birth experience that ended in an emergency C-section. Again, I wasn't prepared for it at all. And since even speaking to professionals, midwives, saying I think I might have postnatal depression, that's ignored. I'm just told, oh, well, go to this mindful mums group. And getting on a bus with a newborn when you're neurodivergent is really difficult, and traveling somewhere. So saying that that's the support that's available to me is just not going to help at all. And I suffer with sort of anxiety now. I can't take medication because I'm breastfeeding, and I've been told to go to the doctor to get medication that I can take. Have I done that? No. Part of it is to do with executive dysfunction, but part of it because, well, doctors don't really support me. So why should I do that? So yeah, that's why I'm advocating for the experiences of neurodivergent women with pregnancy, childbirth, and motherhood, and I'm trying to write it all in a blog. Obviously, that's difficult when you've got a newborn and your ADHD, but yeah, I'm trying to get all the information out there so that other women don't suffer like I did.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Sanai. Yeah, I can definitely relate when it comes to distrusting your health providers, because they just haven't ever, or every time experience you've had, it's been just abysmal. And yeah, it's, you lose faith, and it's really sad, especially because as a neurodivergent, I don't know, I can speak for myself, but we tend to, like, once we have a certain idea of something, or like for me, like if I mentally prepared for something, like, I need to be mentally prepared before signing up for something, or if I'm mentally prepared that, oh, I'm working with one person, and then you randomly change it at the last minute, it's just like, yo, whoa, it upsets my whole system. Like, this is not what I am planning. This is not, I can be flexible because, I'm not saying I have to be 100% rigid, but like, warn me in advance when you're going to change something. Like, don't like last minute, like, I need to mentally, like, if you're going to invite me out, let's give some time so I can mentally prepared to come out for that time. You know what I mean? Don't just last minute ask me. Like, I don't like to be spontaneous in that kind of way. So yeah, I can definitely relate. And yeah, it sucks that, there's a lack of support for women with ADHD and understanding of that. But next question I wanted to ask Hayley, what would you say recommend as like the top 3 accommodations that actually work for ADHD women or neurodivergent women in the workplace or in life? Like, what have you seen in your practice, and what do you tell organizations to do?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is, actually what you were touching on, Kay, earlier, is about that kind of the self-compassion and the self-validation, and, kind of remembering actually that you do have a brain that functions differently, and that means you are experiencing the same tasks differently, the same, environments differently, the same conversations differently. And I think, unfortunately, often, there's been a lifetime of internalizing these beliefs that, you're not measuring up. And the reality is you are working with a different brain to begin with. So I think that self-validation, that self-compassion, and recognizing you're doing your best is extremely important. I think as well, the other thing that comes to mind is like trying to manage a bit more kind of aware of like fluctuating energy levels, like we mentioned earlier, in that fluctuating capacity. So like, often within work, there's a lot of pressure around being consistent and, managing your time effectively. And like as a neurodivergent person, as an ADHD, we don't experience time in the same way, first of all, and we don't have the same cognitive capacity, the same ability to show up with the same amount of executive functions, the same energy, like across the week, let alone the same day. And actually, even just really simple things like recognizing where we can, if we can, like any patterns in terms of our natural energy levels, and maybe scheduling the stuff that does require more focus and that is going to be harder for us to do when we've got a bit more capacity to do it. And maybe then protecting time, if I don't know, you find that like dealing with different people and, like different professionals, whatever it might be, meetings, traveling, however it shows up for you, if that exhausts you more than other tasks, can we make sure that we've accounted for that, essentially, and not then kind of expect ourselves to just then go and do the next most challenging task as soon as we get back from that. And be mindful, even if things like, lots of traditional time management strategies talk about doing things like eat the frog. So like doing like the most challenging, time consuming, demanding task first to get it out of the way. If we've not had like a few little wins first, and if we've not got the right energy levels to do that, we're going to experience an awful lot of frustration. So being flexible, I suppose, with yourself, trying to be a bit more realistic about our energy levels and your capacity, and recognizing the booms and busts in energy. I think just generally as well, like on that kind of the difference in time management, one thing we tend to find in workplaces is it's not necessarily like the problem or the fault of the ADHD, or if you go off task or you become disorganized, you forget what you're doing. We're typically in environments that are constantly stealing your focus. And if we experience time in a sense of it's now or it's not now, then as people are kind of allocating stuff, can you help me with this? Are you free for a second for that? Like, actually, is it something that needs to be done right now? Because if I deal with it now, there's a good chance I've lost what I've done, and I might struggle to come back to that and forget that I was doing that. Or is it something that can wait? In which case, even just things like, making sure that your managers and the people around you know to give you information in a predictable format in a way you can understand it in the same place. So not just coming over and distracting you and asking you a question, but they send it via email or something, or via Teams, or if actually it's going to get lost in the Teams chat, they send it another way, or they have a conversation with you. And just generally, there's the pinch method that can be quite useful for people. I don't know if people have heard of this, but it's kind of like a collection of strategies that we can apply at different times, I suppose, to try and help, particularly with things like task initiation, sustained focus and concentration, like completing stuff. So the P stands for like passion or play. So like trying to build in elements of play or creativity or experimentation into the thing that you're doing. Can you align things with your passions? Can you gamify things a little bit? The I stands for interest. So again, we do much better with tasks that you're genuinely interested in, first of all, or even sometimes it's kind of reframing things like, actually, I see this as a challenge, and that might help pique my interest in doing something that otherwise would be really challenging and boring. Introducing novelty. So even if it's like you do the same thing in a slightly different environment, you do it almost like you start with like the end or somewhere else, or you break things into a short stint. You listen to music or a different type of music when you do it. You try doing this with silence. And I think as well, the key thing here is like allowing yourself the flexibility, because often what we find is people will create systems for themselves and they will only work for a period of time. And then at the point that system doesn't work anymore, again, there's that sense of shame that it's not working and I've given up, and actually we just might need a bit more novelty now. And same with workplaces, actually we just might need to adjust the adjustment, and it's fine, and maybe we'll cycle through 3 or 4 different organization systems. The C, so the PIN, so C stands for collaborate, so things like body doubling, working alongside somebody else at the same time. It can be even, you start a task alongside your kids if you've got kids, or you work alongside somebody else virtually online. It doesn't have to be physically in proximity, but again, that sense of community is really important. And then the H stands for like hurry up. So sometimes like smaller tasks where we know exactly what's expected of us, by when, how, why, with like smaller deadlines can help again with knowing where to get started rather than like a ream of instructions. It's really lengthy and complicated. So yeah, that self-compassion stuff, trying to work with your brain rather than against it, not holding yourself to the neurotypical standards, being mindful of energy and trying to align energy with tasks that are more or less demanding, and then that pinch, like play or passion, interest, novelty, collaboration, hurry up, are the 3 I would say.
Thank you so much, Hayley. There were so many key points that you said that I was just like, yes, no. Like the first one I would say, in terms of like going back to the energy thing and like the burnout cycle, what I noticed is that when I burnt out, it's because I was like hyper focused on the task, and I wouldn't eat, I wouldn't take care of myself. I was just fully locking that task, and then that's when I'll get burnt out. But if I actively like put on like a timer, took breaks, took care of myself, it would take a long time before I burn out again. And that's what people like, that's what we don't understand. We overdo it because we're like, oh, I don't know when I'm going to get this energy again. I don't know when I'm going to be able to focus again. So let me just do it all now. So you don't stop. And that leads out to early burnout because you weren't giving yourself. But if you just paced yourself and give yourself the breaks, it just makes a world of difference. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about what you said. But there was just another thing that you said, and my ADHD, I can't remember what you said, but when it comes to like, yeah, again, as well, getting bored of the systems that you create, that's me to a T. Like, I would have like an app that I love that is working for me, and I do everything for like a while, and then after a month or a couple of weeks, I'm like, yeah, I need something. I can't do this in it. And I really hate that, because it's like, it's finally, you think you have a structure that's finally working, and you're also trying to like live up to that neurotypical or the normal standard of, oh, you have to have a routine, you wake up 5 a.m, you go to the gym, and that's never worked for me, you know what I mean? Especially with a woman being with hormones, we have different energy levels, and then the burnout, and then like, and it's sad that society has such a sense of urgency in everything we do, even though it's not that serious, and that we should be afforded this like take time to do things, because really, like, if that report doesn't go out this time, who's gonna die? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a lot of things that we have this sense of urgency for isn't actually urgent. And as you said, taking the time is so important. Like, we underestimate rest especially for us, especially as women, because we don't know how to rest. Because again, with neurodivergent brains, our brains is moving at like 1,000,000 miles per hour. So again, we're just like, this needs to be done, this needs to be done. So even when we think we're resting, we're not resting because we're still thinking about all the things we need to do. And that still doesn't count as rest. So we're not recovering in the way we're supposed to. So yeah, I just feel like what you said is just like so spot on. And yeah, I wanted to add my own 2 piece to it. So Naomi, you're next. And I wanted to ask you, beyond medication, what is a holistic approach you recommend for managing ADHD as a woman?
So I always tell patients that therapy or well-trained coaching is important. What we know from the research is that medications is going to likely give patients about 40 to 60% of improvement. So one of the conversations that I have at the outset is setting expectations. This medication is not going to make you perfect. You're not going to be a perfect spouse, a perfect employee, a perfect aunt, a perfect child, all the things. That's not going to happen. Behavior change has to happen. So mostly, the way I generally frame it to patients is that medications will help organize your brain enough so that you can actually focus on the behavior change. You can actually work with the therapist or the coach and remember to do the things and do the homework and do all the things. So I try to make sure that they're connected with someone that is able to support them through in the spaces between when I'm seeing them, because it's maybe like once a month, and if they're starting to do better, it's less than that. So I do that, and then making sure that they are sleeping well. I send a lot of people to sleep medicine because there's a lot of sleep difficulties that correlate a lot with ADHD. So we need to take a look at if you maybe have some sort of sleep dysfunction, like sleep apnea, narcolepsy, things like that. If they have not had a full set of labs, I want to see those. If I can't get them from primary or someone else, then we generally draw them here in my office, because we need to make sure that we don't have dysregulated labs. Like, is your iron off? Is your thyroid off? B12, vitamin D, like so many other things that can be dysregulated that are causing symptoms that look like ADHD or are exacerbating the actual ADHD symptoms. So checking for physical health concerns, supplementing when we need to, when there are some deficits on the physical health side of things, and connecting with a neurodivergent informed therapist or coach is usually what I like to do with patients.
Thank you so much, Naomi, for that. Like, yeah, so important, especially as someone who supplements regularly. That helped me so much. And it's so important, like little things like just knowing that, taking vitamin B complex changed my energy so much. And it's something that I'm so grateful for that I figured out, and it just needs to be more information there, because there's so many things that we're naturally deficient in. But yeah, because we've run out of time. It's already 5 o'clock. Time flies, and that's why it's so annoying. Like, I have so many more questions, but I know I need to release some of my speakers. But if some of you can stay, that's great, and then we'll do Q&A after we do the final remarks. So let's do a quick final remarks for everyone, and just a little words of wisdom or anything you want to share with the community to help us out, to help them out, and to encourage them basically. So yeah, let me know. Let's go with Sanai first.
I guess my biggest advice is find your tribe, which obviously ADHD Baddies is doing brilliantly. That way you realize you're not alone, and that gives you the confidence to then speak up as well, and get support and whatever you need, coaching, therapy. Just find people that get you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sanai. Let's go for Andrea. Wait, well, I'll unmute you. I need to unmute you.
Okay. Yeah. When I first started out, I went over to America to a CHAD conference. It was the most incredible experience. It was 1995, and I walked into this hotel room. I've never seen a conference this size. It was like 3,000 people. Honestly, it was like mind-blowing. But I've been going back every year, and that's where I got all my knowledge and all my confidence from, meeting so many people and meeting some incredible speakers. And I think back in the day, the person who was doing most stuff around women with ADHD was Sari Solden. So, have a look at some of her stuff, and Sari and Ellen. I can't remember her surname now. It's so embarrassing.
Okay.
Anyway, she's been over here a few times and spoken for me, and we've had some fun together. But yeah, there's some great people out there been doing a lot of work around women with ADHD. And the other thing is, have a look at the work of Dr. Sandra Kooi in the Netherlands. Sandra and her team, Dora, and others, I know Sandra really, really well. She's just the most amazing person, and they're doing a lot of work and a lot of research around ADHD and hormones, menopause and PMT. It's really, 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 really good stuff to look at. So that, yeah, there's lots of stuff going on all over the place. The other thing is, in October every year is ADHD Awareness Month. And there's a website, it's ADHDawarenessmonth.org. Have a look at that. There's a lot of information on there. Get involved. I think, we run charities, a few charities run, but get involved with your local charities or national charities. If you want to volunteer, for us, come to us. And, at the moment I'm supporting Kemi. So that's, been giving her a lot of support and building her confidence. And just get involved. I think that's the best medicine. Giving back.
Yeah, I can preach for that. I can attest to that. Literally, it's so like, as much as I do this for other people, I definitely do this, I guess, for my inner child. And I wish I had this, as a growing up. So this is like, as much as it's for, as the community of ADHD people and ADHD women, it's a lot for me as well. So I can definitely attest to that. Haley, let's have you next.
Yeah, I suppose I think the thing that I just thought about was like that that sense of like just trusting yourself and trust that what you are capable of. Trust that, if you feel like actually this isn't me, I'm not being supported adequately, I'm being expected to do too much, even if it's, managing the family at home, recognizing that as information rather than confirmation that you're failing. Your emotions are information about how appropriate the current systems you're in are for you, basically. And just, I suppose remembering that we do all have like a bit of a spike profile, and sometimes we might find some things more difficult that other people find very easy, but that doesn't mean that isn't kind of counterbalanced by having lots and lots of strengths. And if we're in the right places with the right people, we can really, really thrive. And so that importance of the community, I think, is extremely important. And also when that kind of self-criticism steps in, just remembering that maybe wasn't our perception of ourselves to begin with. That's something I've internalized from somebody else, and maybe I don't have to carry that for them anymore. And I can, like Naomi said, through therapy, like put some of that stuff down and find who we are, basically, and treat ourselves with compassion. But thank you so much, Kay, for organising this for everybody as well. Just thank you.
Thank you for taking your time for coming. And let's give Naomi the final speaker hesitate before I go ahead.
Sure. So I agree with everything that was said, especially Dr. Kooi. Dr. Kooi is amazing. And Susan Young, I like to follow a lot too. I think she's there in the UK with you guys. So what I would say is, again, piggybacking on what everybody else has said, for anybody that's a person living with ADHD that's here, the research is coming. That there are a lot of people, to Dr. Bilbo's point, when you went to chat, the first time I went to AppStart, I remember standing in the lobby calling my mom and going, I found my people, they're here, like people care, I can't believe this. Like, so I met all these people that cared about ADHD as much as I did. And there are a lot of people that are working very seriously and very passionately about making women and ADHD and the struggles a real core issue. So I want people that are living with it to understand that we are working on it. We see you, we care, keep talking about it, keep coming to things like this, keep supporting things like ADHD Baddies. The more people with lived experience talk about this, the more the science has to look at it. Like, don't shut up about it. Keep talking about it, keep sharing about it, because then we push research. So just know that we're here. Know that we do see you, we do care, keep talking about it. Your emotions, your experiences are valid. Don't let anybody tell you, well, you just shouldn't feel that way. Well, why don't you just do it like this? Your lived experience is valid. Talk about it. Insist that it is real, because it is. So advocate for yourself, keep supporting things like this, and we're working on it. We are.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Naomi. And I just want to do the last little remarks and just thank everyone for coming. Thank you to our speakers for, taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know some of you have to go now, so if you definitely have to go, I do have like 3 questions from the audience that I'm gonna put up for you guys to ask. So if you could stay a little bit longer for that, but if not, I totally understand. But yeah, I just want to say thank you for everyone for showing up and supporting this movement. And as I said, ADHD right now, we're just a community, but we're aiming to grow into a organization where we can actually provide proper support, provide proper resources, provide proper community and events and retreats, and connect with each other. Just like Dr. Naomi said, in terms of being around people like us. And I'm one of those people that will never shut up about ADHD because I know how much it's impacted me. So how much of what I thought was just my personality, or how much of me just being quirky, and I thought I was so unique, and then I realized, no, babe, literally every single thing is a trait of ADHD. And it really, as much as it messed with my identity, it also helped me so much, because I was like, okay, I know I'm not a weirdo, I know I'm not an alien, and now I can find people and connect with people and understand myself and help myself. Because I know I always say, like, having ADHD is like having a box with so many ideas and so many things, but you can only look at it, you can't open it because of executive dysfunction. So if it wasn't for the fact that I was able to take care of myself, I wouldn't be able to put on things like this and have the energy and the capacity to keep going, because now that I'm not medicated, but I supplement, and it's helped me as much as it can. And also being encouraged and supported by my team and by my volunteers and by other speakers and by Andrea and Naomi and Sanai and Haley that have encouraged me throughout the way. And just being a part of this has encouraged me, and all of their support, and just it means so much to me. And the fact that I'm doing this, and for the future neurodivergent people, for the future ADHD women, autistic women, ADHD women, and for them to see that we exist, we matter, we're important, we'll see you, we hear you, and we're making a change and making an effort. Because there's something that I always say is that if it wasn't for the people before us, the disabled people before us, the neurodivergent people before us, doing the research, doing the work, advocating for us, and making the impact, we wouldn't have the accommodations we have today. And in the society that's actively trying to demonize and ridicule and like to diminish our existence and our the validity of our existence, we need to keep pushing, keep fighting, and make it even better now for us and for the future generation of neurodivergent people that will come and add so much value to the world, because we have so much in us to give, but we just haven't, in the system, in the current state of society and the world and the system that works against us, we can't really shine like we should. So I hope this has been an encouragement to everyone watching and everyone participating. I want to relieve the speakers that have to go, but I do want to shout out my team first, and then we'll get into, like, I know there's only been a couple Q&A questions, like 3 questions, so we'll just do those quickly and then I'll let everyone go. And so yeah, if I could get the team on stage. So guys, turn on your cameras and let's give you guys a round of applause for all the help and support that you guys have done. So we have Josh, that's been our tech team, who's been doing all the fun stuff behind the scenes. We have Fallon, who's been a chat moderator, and we also have Chen, who's a chat moderator, but she's currently not. Shout out to Chen as well, Vivian. And yeah, just thank you so much to all of you guys and for your support. And because all of us, right, we're not funded, everything we do at ADHD Baddies, is volunteer based. Everyone is out of the goodness of our heart, we're passionate about this. This is the speaker's life's work, that they're participating and contributing. This is my my mission. I do this full time to support and hopefully get a proper organized and systematic change for support for us. Hence why it was so important to get Sanai on this talk as well, because she's part of the Greens, and Greens are the only party that's actually working in the UK to advocate for neurodiversity policy. So that's very important to knowledge that making the change, making the difference, and actually actively doing that in society and have the change. Because yes, we can talk and come on these events and discuss about it, but if we're not making changes, if we're not making action, if we're not advocating and protesting and pushing for policy change and actual societal change, then it will go in vain. So it's all about action. So yeah, I just want to obviously Vivian again online, just logged in. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate all of you. And yeah, I'm gonna go into the Q. We have a few Q&A questions that we've seen. I'm just gonna have that come up on screen and let the speakers, if there's any speakers, get the speakers to answer that really quickly. So we have one from Vera Allo. How would you navigate, so she asks, how would you navigate ADHD and heavy workload in the corporate world? So does anyone want to go and, answer that?
I mean, I'm happy to jump in if that's okay. I was going to say, I think some of the challenges we see in the corporate world is, I mean, a bit like Kay was saying earlier, like everything is important, everything's urgent, and there are, really quite extreme pressures actually that we can see that do increase the risk of particularly neurodivergent people experiencing burnout. And when we see that alongside like the imposter syndrome that again typically neurodivergent people, neurodivergent women might experience, there is that pressure, again, the internal pressure, I suppose, to keep pushing harder and to prove ourselves. And again, because of that anticipated criticism, being so aware of what we think we're not doing as well as other people or needing support or things taking longer, we can find that, ADHDs can kind of feel like you're never not chasing your tail. So I think there's, I suppose, a couple of things here at play. It can help sometimes sitting down with like maybe a manager and working out in terms of like your regularly occurring tasks. If they were all to kind of arise at the same time on the same day, what absolutely needs to be done, what should be done, and what could be done ideally, and keep that a very, very small list. It can help with also identifying with your manager, like what would be considered good enough. And also, again, kind of actually advocate for yourself. Like we don't have unlimited energy and resources. ADHD brains, particularly at work, tend to work more so in sprints than in marathons. And the reality is, if we expect ourselves again to also be able to perform in that very consistent, slow manner, we are more likely to then experience that shame and internalized criticism as well. And so, yes, I think they're actually identifying, like I said, what must be done, what's very, very clear in terms of expectations, what's good enough, making sure we still take rest, and even like very clear boundaries with ourselves around, like, again, often in corporate world, we see that people are more likely to work later, regularly. Well, how late am I willing to work before it is, it comes to a detriment of my health and well-being? How many times a week am I willing to work late? And if not everything can be done, then maybe that reflects, again, like a bit of a systemic issue and maybe a lack of appropriate staffing. And sometimes it is helpful, actually, one thing to just, I'm mindful of going on, but like the other thing I think that is important sometimes is to reflect actually on whether or not the environment that you're in is the right one for you. And I think sometimes what we hear within our organization is like, sometimes people feeling that to walk away feels like some sort of failure, because again, it feels like I should be able to manage this because other people seem like they're able to, but not everybody's neurodivergent and not everybody's having the same experience with the same managers, same clients, same environment, same pressures. And if it doesn't work for you, sometimes the best thing we can do is allow ourselves to explore what might work. And look at things like access to work as well if you're in the UK, and see what other supports might be available, like funding for coaching, for example, or specialist equipment, reasonable adjustments that might be part funded. But yeah, I'll leave it there in case anyone else has any thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Hayley. So now I had to leave, but I'm going to go on to is there anyone else that wants to add another on top of that, or is that all good? Cool. I'm going to move to the next question then. This one's for Naomi. How do you explain to your parents of color about having ADHD diagnosis?
So I think kind of similar to what I discussed before about explaining it more from almost a medical side, and not that this is like a cognitive failure for you as the patient. I often, even for adults, I have, if they are okay with it, I will have their parents come in. Because sometimes parents, it's more acceptable if it's coming from a clinician versus coming from the patient themselves, because parents sometimes default to that, oh, well, you're just looking for an excuse, or you just want a reason to be this way. But when you can explain like some of the neurobiology, and that this, in the same way, if your child needed glasses or if they were born with diabetes, it's the same sort of thing, that it's not a thing that they chose. So I try to make sure that dialogue opens up, conversation opens up, talk with the patient themselves about what they think the barrier is for their parent, like if it's a cultural thing or just an expectations kind of thing. Will mom and dad be just disappointed because I've always been the good kid and I'm the smart kid, and now maybe that means I'm not that person, which means that they are in some way a failure as a parent. So we talk about ways to have conversations with them, that this is not about saying that you did something wrong, because sometimes it goes back to the parents feeling that, oh wow, did I miss something, did I allow my child to be broken, and that's not true. So sometimes it's just a lot of education about dispelling myths about what this really is and how we treat it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Naomi. That was such good insight. This one's for Andrea. So Veronica said, I started a new organization that supports parents with challenges with their child's education. We want to specialize in ND, supporting ND. What do you suggest the best path to take is? Oh shoot, wait, you're muted.
Yeah, the thing is that there's so many organizations setting up. The most important thing is, what kind of organization are you going to be? Are you going to be a non-profit? Are you going to be a charity? Are you going to be a CIC? Make sure before you do anything, you have good people on board and you have good policies and procedures in place, because your foundations are very, very important. Over the 30 years that I've been doing this, people have come along and set up organizations and they've been around for a bit, then they've just faded away, because everybody thinks they're the right person for the job, and it's very difficult to sustain it. And if there's no foundations, it'll fail. So make sure you have good foundations to build your organization on, and join up with other organizations that can advise you. I'm always happy to give advice. If you contact me, happy to support you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea. Okay, we're going to do one more question, and I'm just going to open it up to everyone on the chat. Anybody wants to take it. So Miss F22042 says, such an amazing talk. Thank you. I've received my medication a few days ago and I'm now scared to take it. Any advice for someone about to begin their meds for the first time? And like, it doesn't say what meds. Oh, she will be on Medicanet. I can't say that. I'm trying to try to spell it in the chat. But yeah, it says, because I think the banner is too small, she'll be on Medicare. Okay, I don't know.
I'll take that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just looked it up because I'm assuming that's like a European
UK one,
state. Yeah. But it looks like it's a methylphenidate, so similar to like what we think of as Ritalin here. And so concerned about taking it, it's normal to be concerned, but what we know is that these meds have been well studied. They are some of the most effective meds in all of medicine. All of the guidelines tell us that as long as there are no contraindications, like you don't have cardiac concerns or glaucoma, seizure disorders, things like that, that are contraindicated to these meds, they are generally quite safe. So I would say, I would assume that your provider has educated you on side effects and things like that are potential side effects. If I always say to my patients, if anything doesn't feel okay, you call my office, you let me know. And we talk about what sort of things, like you may find that your heart beats a little faster or your mouth is a little dry, things like that. But if anything doesn't feel okay, you need to tell your provider. I wouldn't say that's going to happen. Most times patients do very, very well, but it's normal to be concerned. Take the medicines, monitor how you're feeling from a potential side effect standpoint, but also like what is it improving, and then be able to give feedback to your provider about what is helping and more, maybe even more so what's not helping. Maybe I was able to get out of bed and I started, but I'm still not finishing, like those sorts of things. So normal to feel worried, but if you have received this order from a qualified clinician, I would encourage you that it's likely quite safe.
Awesome. Thank you so much to our speakers. I'm going to let you go now. That was our last question. So Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you. And thank you guys for all your questions that you asked in the chat. And as I said, guys, we are ADHD Baddies. We have events that we do every single month online and in person. We would love if you could give us some feedback. So we have QR codes all over, as you can see. One to join our community, one if you want to be a volunteer, and also free resources from our speakers and from myself on, you know, how to help with your ADHD. I'll also try to send that to you guys via email after, you know, I've decompressed from this event, because I've been so anxious. Like, I didn't even sleep yesterday to, you know, get this all organized and up and running for you guys. As well as would love the feedback if you could scan the QR code, and also, and there's a lot of QR codes, guys. But and yeah, so we have a feedback QR code that's over there, and we also have a support and donate QR code GoFundMe that's going to help us, you know, actually set up as a proper organization so that we can, you know, continue to support you guys, so we can continue to do events like this, so we can continue, you know, to create a community, run events, do things, and, you know, get out the awareness and spread the awareness and do the research on women that are neurodivergent, have ADHD, and get the support that we deserve and need. So I just want to say thank you, everyone in the chat. TPJMO2 thank you so much. Miss F, Miss T, everyone that's been in the chats and been talking, I see you guys. Love you so much, and I appreciate you for showing up and participating. I hope you guys, you know, got all the information you need, and, you know, like, we're so happy to have you a part of our community. Again, shout out to all of the speakers, shout out to all of my volunteers that helped, and shout out to you guys especially that has, you know, that is here and is, you know, making this happen. Because without you guys, if you guys don't show up, then, you know, I wouldn't be here doing this stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna leave this on screen for you guys, I'll leave it on screen for you guys to have, so that you guys can see it and, you know, can scan and use it for a while, and then I'm gonna end the live in maybe about 5 minutes. So yeah, anyway, guys, it's been amazing. You guys have been awesome, and I'm really grateful to be here and to be doing this for you guys, and, you know, for all the future neurodivergent girlies that are going to benefit from this. So yeah, thank you so much. Happy International Women's Month, and peace out. See you later.
you.